Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of Cannabis Unlocked. Today, I'm your host, Jordan Youkilis, one of the founders of Key Investment Partners, and I'm very excited to be joined again by Scott Jordan, the founder of Alternative Finance Network. Scott, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, Jordan, thanks for having me. Always good connecting up with another Jordan, particularly, early on in the year. Happy New Year to you and your crew. Hope 24 is going to open the door to the best year ever for you.
Absolutely. I hope the same for you. And, I think as we were kind of chatting about before we started rolling, I think 2024 has the potential to be the best one yet for cannabis. And, that may be a hot take given how challenging the market has been the last couple years. But I think that just is natural with emerging industries, right? Where you see these violent downswings, but you also see very strong recoveries in the up years. And the dominoes seem to be lining up to make it such that 2024 has the potential to be a fantastic year for cannabis.
I think so. I think we're going to get some positive things happening in terms of, Congress and the DEA. We think rescheduling is definitely going to happen. And we think with descheduling, 280E, is not the draconian tax that, is killing the industry. We also think some of the states are going to get wise to, we can't, the state is the ones that are making the money right now. The states and the federal government are the ones that are making the money, and they got no risk. And so we think that as we've seen other states enact 280E, where they'll allow them for the state tax to deduct, normal and customary business expenses, we think the same kind of things are going to happen with the rest of the, legalization and the rest of the laws and other regulations that cannabis has to live under. Plus,
Absolutely.
we're seeing more and more lenders now that are wanting some, you know, to either get the deposits, which are very big, these days. The bankers really want deposits, and they also want to have some exposure to the industry so that when it does legalize, when, not if, that they'll be ready and positioned to be able to take advantage of this newly emerging industry.
Absolutely. So maybe taking a step back, I'm sure a lot of our listeners will be familiar with both the rescheduling consideration that's in process and what Section 280E is, both of which you just mentioned. But maybe for folks who aren't as familiar or aren't as close to the situation, could we take a step back and could you talk about what rescheduling means and what that Section 280E is and what the implications for 280 would be in light of potential rescheduling?
Sure. Well, we could have a whole webinar just on that. So I'm going to try to give you the shortened version. Basically 280E is the IRS code that designates that anybody trafficking in a federally illegal substance is not able to deduct any expenses other than cost of goods sold. So that is adds up to roughly 30% higher or lower profit. And a lot of times companies are losing money and still having to owe for taxes. So, I mean, that's just like a killer. You work all year and you owe money, to the feds with penalties, et cetera, et cetera. So we are hoping with rescheduling, Biden said that he wanted the DEA to reschedule cannabis off of a Schedule One, which has no, medicinal benefits at all, which we all know is baloney, and schedule it for a two or a three. We feel that based on it becoming a three or becoming descheduled, that there would then not be the penalty. 280E would go out the window, and all of a sudden, all of these companies would become much, much more profitable or go from being unprofitable to being profitable,
Mhm.
which of course will raise the whole stance of the image of the industry so that more and more people will get into it, more and more banks will get into it, and there'll be more and more ability for investors that are just looking for a profit, not that are looking to, save the world or come out with other products that are, beneficial to people. Just, pure and simply investors will then jump on the bandwagon and cause an explosion in stock prices, an increase in valuations hugely. Because we saw what happened, a few months ago when they first announced it. I mean, cannabis stocks shot up like, a hockey stick, like they should. So they've been beaten down tremendously. We think there's an opportunity to take a look at some of the cannabis companies that are trading at very, very low valuations and, grab some stock cheap or some options cheap and be able to take advantage of the run up.
Fantastic. We certainly agree with your whole assessment there. And Scott, would you remind the listeners what is it that you all do at Alternative Finance Network?
Sure. So we've created a network of lenders and funding sources. We have over 120 now that are cannabis friendly, that will lend into the industry, whether it's equipment, real estate, working capital, senior secured loan, construction loans, you name it. We've got a half a dozen or more lenders in each one of those categories that are willing to lend into the cannabis industry. So you come to us with one application, we can get you all the financing that you need, and we start off with trying to look for bank or very inexpensive money, life insurance money, um, credit union money that will help you grow your business without having to give up equity. That's really what we do. We we provide the rest of the capital stack once you've raised your equity or have equity into the deal.
That's fantastic, and certainly a mission critical need for the industry, especially since the beginning of, I call it 2022, when we really saw access to capital in cannabis start to dry up dramatically and the cost of capital therefore increase significantly. So would love to hear what your network has, how your network has been impacted over the last 2 years, right? As cost of capital has gone up, A, and B, would also love to know how your existing portfolio has performed in light of the difficult challenges over the last 2 years.
Sure. Well, thank goodness the portfolio has performed impeccably well. We've had one default, which we ended up curing out of the 84 loans that we've initiated. So we think that's really good.
Absolutely.
Um, and in terms of what we're doing, we found some lenders have cycled out, but we found some ones have cycled in, particularly the ones that are looking to provide depository and other services to the industry.
Hmm.
We think that not only, I mean, I'm hoping for a double banger here. 280E goes away, and we get credit card processing. Because with credit card processing, that is the killer these days that makes the dispensary such a big target because there's so much cash there. you know we want to eliminate the danger, or not eliminate, but reduce the danger of break-ins and robberies, and also have people spend more, traditionally 20 to 30% more when they can charge it. And then maybe we'll have some of the buy now pay later lenders come into play here that I see on every single checkout card. It seems like there's Klarna or buy now pay later, and we think that will increase the industry greatly. And then the unknown factor, of course, is what's going to happen in November with the election.
Sure.
And who knows? I mean, who knows? I would love to see people's predictions today, what's going to happen the day after election, and all the way up to January 21, when the new president or the president gets sworn in for the next 4 years. You just don't know. I mean, the stuff that I watch on the
Totally.
news right now that's taking place with all of the trials with Trump going on, it's like, really, I could have never, ever, ever imagined that the president, potential president of the United States, former president of the United States, would be on trial in 5 different places for 5 different things.
Yeah,
Seems crazy. And
it
he
does.
continues to pick up, momentum, in the polls, and uses it to raise money for, future, campaign spending. It just, I don't think anybody could have predicted that like 4 years ago, 5 years ago, before Trump, became president. Could we have really predicted this kind of outcome? It just seems unrealistic to me.
Yeah.
It's like a
And then
movie.
on the other side of the aisle, you think about the fact that, there's a lot of speculation that Joe Biden's not going to even end up running again, right? And it's like, wow, so the two front runners, neither of them may even be on the ballot, right? So it's, election years, I think, are notoriously volatile. And I think 2024 is set for a
Crazy
disproportionate amount of that
volatility.
volatility.
Yeah. I hope to make it to see the election this next year and what happens. Okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So as you talk about, credit card processing, what do you think it'll take for that to really be a viable option in cannabis, right? We've seen a lot of players that have attempted to do it in the existing framework. I think they've generally struggled both on finding partner banks willing to work with cannabis businesses and on getting end user adoption because whatever solution they come up with typically, requires some sort of workaround that is not necessarily easy or convenient for the end customer to use. So that's all to ask, what do you think it'll take for payments to be able to be a viable, or sorry, for credit card processing to be a viable payment solution in cannabis? Is it rescheduling, or would we need some additional legislative change in addition to that?
Well, you need one of two things. We've got one of our partners is working right now with a credit card company that has supposedly solved this issue. And we're waiting for a 90-day mark of, okay, what's been really happening? Is your workaround really a workaround for a MasterCard or Visa credit card option, not just, PIN debit? So that would be great if his solution works. Oh my gosh, it's going to be wonderful. The other solution is getting MasterCard or Visa to buy in and say, okay, we're going to allow this. This is now, again, if it's not federally illegal and it's not a Schedule One, there should be a lot of momentum to pick up a 25 to $30 billion and growing industry at 25-30% a year. We think someone's going to go into that and someone's going to pick that up. So either one of those happening. In fact, I want to come back next year in January and let's see what happens here on these predictions, and on the outcome of, the presidential election,
Yeah.
safe, all of these things. It would be fascinating. I looked at a broadcast that I did with Sunday Seafried back in 2016. It was so fascinating to see, you couldn't get a bank account. You could beg, and there was maybe one provider of a bank account, and it was super expensive,
Hmm.
$2,000 to $10,000 a month per account.
Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, look at how much that's changed. You got banks
Yeah.
fighting over it now. You got free accounts. I mean, I I got shut down by one of the top banks, and had my choice. This was 2 years ago, of which bank I was going to go to. I chose one with no fee, smaller bank, wanted to see what it was like. I bank with one of the other top five money center banks, and 24/7 service, etc. This is 9 to 5, baby. 501. Call me tomorrow. I got kids to pick up at school. I got horses to feed, cows to milk. So
That's so funny.
yeah,
So, you talked about how if we do get rescheduling, that, the immediate impact will be on 280E going away and dramatically improving cannabis businesses' profitability. I'd be curious to also get your thoughts on how you think that will impact access to debt and equity capital for cannabis
sure.
businesses.
Well, it will certainly increase it. It will take away the fear that many companies' boards have, but I don't think a lot of banks are going to jump into it wholeheartedly because first of all, there's not enough history for banks to
Hmm.
really get comfortable. Second of all, the history has not been especially good the last couple of years with the defaults, with the public companies, going out of business or not lending anymore. We used to see AFC Gamma at all the shows. You don't see them anymore. Several of the other ones that, are much more quiet. They're not showing up at shows, although they are doing deals. It looks to be some of the companies have come along with these, loan to own deals because we've taken a look at some of these deals, and there's no way that it pencils without a takeover and a selling of the assets or some kind of a roll up if they have, valuable retail assets.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. But we're very bullish that those things are going to happen. We're very bullish that descheduling is going to happen. that SAFE is going to pass finally, or some version of SAFE, and that the industry will bounce back and it'll be a glorious renewal of of an industry that has tremendous potential for improving people's lives, both mentally and also medicinally. We're really excited about some of the medicinal benefits that can, come from descheduling and being able to test more and, use the plant for the real benefit of the plant, which is, all of these diseases that it can attack or help people with pain management.
Totally. Yeah. So I love the optimism you have, for good news coming in 2024 for the cannabis sector. I mean, tell me what you think will be kind of the broader implications going forward of assuming that we do get rescheduling and the industry is able to really finally operate in an environment where it's reasonable to become profitable and you're taxed at a rate consistent with other retail industries.
Yeah. Well, I think that there'll be a lot of money that'll come off the sideline that's been
Mhm.
kind of sitting there, kind of waiting for, things to improve. I think, certainly jobs. I think that there'll be much more hiring, that'll go on, and I think, that'll be positive, particularly in an election year. I think that the banks will discover, a new customer base to be able to serve and go after. And then I think a few guys are going to go ahead and take advantage of buying assets, at a deep discount,
Yeah.
cobbling them together, rolling them up. We're actually working with a company right now that has a very ambitious roll-up plan where we're doing the first one now, and we expect that that will, produce um, other wins as well for him and his strategy. So whenever there's movement, whether it's moving up or moving down or consolidating, there's opportunities for entrepreneurs that see what's ahead, are taking advantage of getting assets at a discount
Yeah.
and putting them together. And then again, if 280E goes away, all of a sudden a lot more companies will be profitable.
Yeah. And I'm really glad you bring up all the distressed and consolidation opportunities, right? Because I think that's also one of the things that's changed a lot for cannabis versus call it, the last downturn, which was, when COVID first hit 2020, right? I think at that point, the industry was so nascent and the valuations that folks had raised at in 2018 and 2019 were so astronomical and off the charts that like that they were never going to make money, right? But I think the difference now is that the money and the companies that have been funded over the last few years, while maybe they were again overvalued and people didn't appropriately consider the impact of 280E, et cetera, now you've got real assets, real businesses that maybe were just overlevered or undermanaged or just, too difficult to make a profit in that 280E era. But with some of that stuff going away, you have real opportunity to consolidate the industry, especially if you can find some big capital partners to come in behind you. So that's why we know we're more bullish than ever on the opportunity set going forward for cannabis here.
Good, good. Well, we see a lot of deals. We'd certainly love to, show you some deals that need some equity.
Absolutely.
We're very, optimistic. There's some good operators out there that just need a fair shot at making a profit and having capital at reasonable costs. We think, of course, once it does get descheduled, there will be more and more banks that will, get in. We'll start seeing larger deals and also deals on hopefully on equipment and working capital. Mostly right now, it's on real estate or real estate based. But
Yeah.
we're hoping that, with companies becoming more profitable, being able to get audited, being able to see real financials, real banks will come in with real money.
Yep, totally. Now, we see a lot of plant touching businesses that have pretty meaningful outstanding tax liabilities.
Yeah.
And so I'd be curious, A, how do you all underwrite that? And B, let's say we get rescheduling this quarter or next quarter. How are you thinking about what that means for retroactive unpaid 280E taxes?
Well, we don't think that the government will go back and retroactively apply 280E. That would be, nirvana. We're hoping for just a good outcome, not a Nirvana one. It would be great if they did, but we don't see that as being as something we're banking on. We do underwrite to take into account taxes, but we also take into account what we see as increased in margins. Um, and the one of the biggest factors is how much is each market going to decrease in wholesale pricing over the next 12 months? Is your crystal ball giving you a firm answer that I can go back to my, underwriting committee? Is it 12.5% in this state and 17, and a quarter in this state? Or, what is it? It's hard to know what's going to happen in terms of that.
Totally.
So yeah, it's a real art, not a real science.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting. We've seen a lot of different plant touching businesses that take different strategies with their 280E payables, right? Some that are managing it very actively and I'd say taking a more liberal interpretation of the law, while still having the at least backup to argue it, versus others who have grown more slowly and have been paying it down um, as scheduled. Others who have just completely ignored the rule and not paid any of it, right? And so it'll be interesting to see which strategy works out, and does the tax man come to collect for some, and do others get left holding the bag? It's a lot of variables still to be seen.
I agree. I agree, and I'm glad I don't have to face that issue.
Yeah. Yeah, us
'Cause
too.
it's a bear. I was audited. I had an IRS audit about 6 years ago or so, 7 years ago. Very small amount, $15,000. Nothing, right? I mean, why in the heck is the IRS going after somebody for 15 grand? I can't tell you the nights that I lost sleep. And then I learned, they're not going to throw me in jail. I mean, I responded, I got them the information, I wasn't ignoring it, it wasn't a large amount. But you just have these irrational fears of, they're going to show up one day, or, they're going to do a Tommy Chong and 25 SWAT guys are going to show up with machine guns at 3 in the morning and scare the crap out of me and my wife.
Yeah.
So it's PTSD. It's like, thank goodness it wasn't that kind of case.
Yeah, thank goodness.
Yeah. And by the way, I ended up winning, but it cost me more to defend than if I had just paid in the first place.
Yeah,
I
that's how
came.
they get you.
Like, how do you do that?
Can't cheat death and taxes, right? Even if you don't owe the taxes. It's crazy.
It is crazy. It is crazy. Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
So what do you
Scott, this
guys
is
see
so
coming up
good.
in 2024, in the equity market? What sort of things are you looking at and deals that are coming across your table?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we have very similar sentiments, right? We're cautiously optimistic that we are going to get rescheduling here. I think the view internally is that, if it's going to happen this year, it'll probably happen in the first half, because I think as you get too close to the election, no one wants to do anything that can really rock the boat, right? I think that the most likely reason that it'll happen this year is that it's a way for the Biden administration to show a big win for their base, going into the election. And we've heard anecdotally that their campaign has already started setting up focus groups in key battleground cities to kind of test different ways to market cannabis rescheduling. And as I'm sure last month, Biden came out with an announcement regarding pardoning everyone for cannabis offenses. So we felt like that was certainly a positive signal in the right direction towards rescheduling. Obviously can't count our chickens before they hatch. If we don't get rescheduling, or if the DEA says it's going to be just Schedule 2, meaning that 280E stays in place, then I think we'll have to change our overall strategy pretty quickly. But and until we get that bad news, we're operating under the cautious optimism that we are going to get rescheduling, which I think, to your point about debt markets, will also significantly impact equity markets and make raising capital much easier.
Oh, yeah.
That said, we also recognize that given the volatility in the markets more broadly, given the increasing interest rates and that sort of thing, that I think investors as a whole have cooled off on equity relative to debt. And so what we've really been focusing on for our current fund too are finding really unique investment opportunities that have the benefits of both debt and equity securities, right? Where we can get downside protection, current income, and equity like upside. So looking to structure a lot of convertible debt or preferred equity with significant liquidation preferences, that kind of thing. And, the silver lining for us on the buy side with capital being as scarce as it is in cannabis is that we are able to structure those really attractive securities.
Great. Well,
Yeah.
good. Well, let's put on the calendar, sometime in January to get together and let's look at this before, see what actually happened, and see what it looks like for 2025.
I love it. Let's do it, Scott. And I think, I'd love to end with your prediction on whether, the cannabis market this year is going to outperform the S&P.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's such at a low point. I can't see the S&P, doing much. I think cannabis will do very, very well because it's starting at such a low basis.
Yep. I
I hope.
agree. I agree.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see. We'll see on our next podcast in
All
January
right.
25 whether our prediction was right.
That's right. Very good. Thanks so
Awesome.
much for having me on, Jordan. Always a pleasure getting together with you and another Jordan. Uh,
Absolutely. You too, Scott. I really appreciate the time, and the insights are really valuable as always.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Take care.
All right. You too. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.